Welcome back to the New Bridge Radio Show on WLTK-DB Let's Talk. I am your host, Kevin Mackey, and we are connecting you to what's next in your life. And we're here to remind you that you are important to this world, and we sure are glad to have you along on this episode of the New Bridge Radio Show. Remember, you can catch us live on our station website. All you got to do is head on over to www.WLTK-DB.com and you can catch the show live. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook, as well as Twitch, and we welcome you on those platforms. Also, if you would like to get in touch with the New Bridge Radio Show, you can email us. Our email address is thenewbridgeradioshow@gmail.com. We love hearing from you about what you like about the show. We also love hearing your stories. If you would like to be a guest on the New Bridge Radio Show, just send us an email. Let us know your story, because we love talking to people who have connected to what was next in their life. So send us an email and we may invite you on the show to tell your story. Tonight on the New Bridge Radio Show, we have a very special guest, and I know you're going to love her. She is really unlike any guest that we have ever had on our show, because she is a profit attraction expert that comes with a side of sound healing. She is quite valuable and important to this world because she is very good at explaining complex subjects in a way that makes sense to everyone. And she is very, very good at connecting people to what's next in their business and in their life. She is Sue Wilhite, and we are very pleased to welcome her to the show. Welcome to the New Bridge Radio Show. How are you doing, Sue?
Hey, Kevin, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled. I've been, you reached out to us some time ago, and boy, I was like, oh, I wish we could have you on sooner.
That happens.
I know. We booked up really quick on this volume of the New Bridge Radio Show. But I wanted to let you know, I read your book, 21 Templates.
Wow, cool.
And let me tell you what you're working with.
Okay. Oh boy. Oh yes. Tell me.
So I am a time-space
Nice.
priestess.
Yes.
And I saw in the book it was the same as Bill Clinton. I'm like, I wonder.
Yes, and everybody expresses it, in their unique way, right? You come in with different DNA and different environmental experiences, and so the nature plus nurture takes effect, right? So you're going to be different from every other time space plus priestess combo there is. That you're unique. You get to be unique. And so for folks who are like, what the heck are they talking about? So I wrote this book. This was my master's project in Tarot. And I wrote a book making the major arcana of Tarot into personality types. And how would they show up if they were human beings? And how would they express their personality? And I did it as a series of essays. And my teacher said, cool, turn it into your book. That will be your master's program. Okay. So I did. And the time-space personality, or template, as I call it, is one where you could have two different ways of interacting with the world, and sometimes both, but usually stronger on one or the other. So it's either you can't see the forest for the trees. So you get really down in the detail and you're like right there and okay, this is what it is. And getting to the big picture is sometimes hard because you're literally living minute by minute. And what is in front of you is what matters. Or you can't see the trees for the forest because you're getting what I call the God's eye view. And you're seeing all of time and space, and it's big and huge. And oh my God, there was something in front of me. No, was I supposed to do the dishes?
Yep, that's exactly right.
And so those folks tend to be, whether you're doing the can't see the forest for the trees or can't see the trees for the forest, you tend to be very, what I call, internally focused.
Yes.
It's what's inside your head that matters. And that's the part that's the priestess. The priestess just knows.
Yep.
They don't need any extra, validation. It's like, yeah, that's true. Next.
Right. And once I started doing it, of course, I had to find out what my family was.
Exactly. Everybody does.
Right. And I'm like, oh my God, my mother is exactly like me.
There you go. Oh, that could
Yeah.
create some child rearing stuff. Yes.
Yeah. And I went through, did my coworkers. I was like, well, maybe that's why we don't get along.
Exactly.
Not my coworkers I have now, but coworkers in the past. I was like, oh yeah, this is like all of this makes sense now. Now I know why. So I really loved it. And what was interesting, it was based on the Voyager tarot, which is fascinating. And I remember seeing an interview. I can't recall the guy who invented it.
James Wanless.
Yes. I saw an interview with him a few years ago, and boy, is he fascinating.
Oh, he's amazing. He was my teacher. He was the one who encouraged me to do this as my
Oh,
master's.
really? Oh,
Yes.
wow.
He is one of the most amazing human beings on the planet.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just struck by just how articulate and smart he was, and just how insightful.
Yes. And intuitive.
Yes, absolutely. So and then I kind of, once I got through the book, I kind of had to compare it to regular tarot and go, oh, okay, this is the card, this is the card, this is what I am. But I found the cards fascinating.
Yes. Yes. And I prefer the Voyager tarot. Not that I won't work with any of the other decks. I prefer the Voyager because it takes you out of the kind of medieval mindset, and it's more forward looking than past looking. One of James's big things is doing fortune creation, not fortune telling. And that's what the Voyager is all about. So instead of having the judgment card, which is what time space is,
Right.
instead of it being about, the last Trump and, judgment and all of that, it's more about, okay, the whole point of that card is at some point things come to their natural conclusion. And how do you view that space of time? It's like that story, I forget the whole poem, but it's the thing that sums up. On your tombstone, there's the date you were born, the date you died, and there's a dash in the middle. And it's what you do with that dash that's the important part.
Right.
Right. And it goes back to what you said in your introduction. It's like, how do you matter in the world? And that's what that time space card in a reading is all about. Is like, okay, let's get some perspective on this. What are you doing?
Right.
In the bigger picture.
Right. Yeah. So I really liked the book. I also spent some time getting to know your story, and I know you came from the tech world.
Yes.
And loved being a software programmer. And then you kind of had a health issue that kind of made you rethink everything. So tell us a little bit about that, because there are probably a ton of people in the tech world listening.
Oh, yes. And the first thing I'll say is come out of the woo-woo closet.
Right.
Please. I did it. You can do it. Yeah. So it's kind of fascinating looking back on my career now from this perspective, because here I was, a woman in the tech industry, in the computer information systems industry, that just sort of, I won't say casually because there was work involved, but I went from being an operator stuffing green bar printouts, really dates me, into people's cubby holes as the operator, to being the IT manager of a worldwide genomics company
Mhm.
in 6 years.
Mhm.
And yeah, I got an ulcer. This was not fun. This was stress.
Right.
There was a ton of stress involved in that because my focus in being in computer information systems was not the computer and the tech stuff, which, don't get me wrong, I think tech is cool.
Mhm.
Tech is so much fun. It's because I wanted to make my what we call the users or the customers' lives better in the
Right.
companies so that they could get their work done faster, so that they could not spend hours and hours at work adding up little figures here and trying to pull in this data from here and this data from here. If I could spend a couple of hours creating a report or a database or a system where they could have all of the information at their fingertips in the moment, and they could get on with their life, get on with their job, and go home be with their families or go play underwater softball or whatever it was they wanted to do, then I was all for that. I
Mhm.
would put in the effort so they didn't have to.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what caused me the stress.
Mhm.
And then a friend of mine took me to a hypnotherapy demo. And I will say that at the time, hypnotherapy was something that I wasn't familiar with. I had grown up watching, I always forget her last name. I'm going to have to look her up again. Um, Her first name was Pat. It was Pat something, the hypnotist,
Mhm.
who wore Tammy Faye eye makeup that did these stage shows in Vegas that they, for whatever reason, they broadcast on the local PBS station, and then later on HBO.
Mhm.
And that was what hypnosis was to me.
Mhm.
And when my friend dragged me to this hypnosis demo, this hypnotherapy demo, the gentleman who was doing it asked for volunteers if we had something that we wanted to have treated with hypnosis. And I said, yeah, I've got an ulcer. Go for it. You know, yeah, sure. Go ahead. And I turned out to be the only test subject there.
Mhm.
And he worked on me for an hour and a half, demonstrating 5 different techniques. And at the end of the evening, I had no more ulcer.
That is amazing. I also had a similar experience, not with an ulcer, but I went and had hypnosis because I smoked 2.5 packs of cigarettes every
Mm-hmm,
day
mm-hmm,
and had asthma and just a ton of issues. I went to a hypnotist at 8:32 in the morning and 6 years ago, and I have never smoked, and I have no lung problems. And I was like, I don't know how it worked or why, and but it just worked. And at that time, I was like, this is fascinating. I need to be able to do this.
yes,
Mhm,
yes, that was exactly what happened.
mhm,
It's what we call in the business a convincer.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I went back to work the next morning and I said, I'm giving you 18 months notice. I'm going to spend a year getting training. I'm going to
mhm,
spend 6 months developing my practice, and then I'm quitting.
mhm,
And I did.
mhm.
And never looked back and went down the rabbit hole of the whole mind body connection and how that worked and neuroscience and all that good stuff. I mean, that's just mind candy to me.
Yeah, yeah. And it's fascinating to find out what happens under hypnosis
Yes.
and how people can um, respond to it. So I'm trained in QHHT, which is Dolores Cannon's quantum healing modality, and I was just like, oh my god! The first time I started messing around with past life regression, I was like, what?
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really does open up. I must say that having those experiences in that really changed my perspective of my life and my world. It kind of disconnected me. I always thought, oh, I'm a Scottish American person and I was born in this family, but then I did the hypnosis. I'm like, that isn't what I am at all.
We contain multitudes,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's one of the things that I think I wish more people could experience,
Mhm.
because it is so life changing and life affirming
Right.
when you get it that we are all the same.
Mhm.
And yet we show up as different, right? I said that at the beginning. We all come out
Right.
randomized by DNA, nature plus nurture. And then we also have, as I said, we contain multitudes. We have all of these amazing experiences from millennia, and it's
Mhm.
great. It's
Mhm.
fabulous. And if we could all recognize that and stop getting territorial about who we are and what we are and where we are, that would be really nice.
Right. It really would be. We can have really great we can have really great festivals.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you
more
know,
more sports.
yes.
If we could get out of that mindset. So I'm curious, uh what piqued your curiosity about sound?
Yeah. So then we get to fast forward a few years. And well, actually, we kind of go backwards a little bit. My family was very musical. My
Mhm.
father was he had a side gig as a professional singer. So he would sing at weddings and festivals and things like that. And my mom played the piano, and we had music. I had opera going on in the background of my life growing up. I was just There's a local San Francisco radio station called KKHI that was the classical music station for decades,
Mhm.
and that was always playing in the background. Uh, and so sound and music and that sort of thing was always interesting, and just part of who I was.
Mhm.
And when I got into the whole mind body metaphysics arena, sound healing is definitely one of the categories. And I loved people who had the crystal bowls and the Tibetan bowls, and if there was a sound healing event, I would go.
Mhm.
Because that was like, oh, this is perfect.
Mhm.
And then I saw a speaker come to a local bookstore who had created a sound healing technique using tuning forks. And now it's where I get to show off I can explain things so people can understand it. This is, this is we're going to get into some interesting stuff here, folks. And I promise you it will make sense. So keep the brains on, keep the attention going. So we have a brain, we have a heart, and we have a gut, right? So
Mhm.
far, so good, right?
Right.
We can all go for that one.
Right.
The brain and the heart, we know because we've seen it on TV, produce electrical signals, right?
Mhm.
You've seen it on TV. Some show will have the electrodes that are attached to the skull, or attached to the heart to monitor the heart. And what they are doing is they are recording the electric signal that is coming off the brain and the heart. Well, it turns out the gut's doing the same thing. The gut is putting out electrical signals.
Mhm.
And so we have generated by our own biological processes this electromagnetic field that surrounds our body in about a 2 to 3 foot range, above us, below us, back, front, side. It looks kind of like an apple. It's got a little bit of a dimple at the top and a little bit of a dimple at the bottom, and
Mhm.
but it's pretty round all the way around. And so it's one of its names is called the biofield. In the metaphysical world, sometimes it's called the aura.
Mm-hmm.
And it is generated by our heart and our brain and our gut. Now, here's the fun part. The fun part is that our thoughts are electrical impulses.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And those electrical impulses, if they are generated over and over and over again, the body is very efficient, particularly around the brain. It doesn't want to use that incredibly powerful organ more than it has to. So it tends to store stuff that it uses over and over and over again. So if there is a strongly held thought, emotion, or belief,
mm-hmm.
the body stores it in this electromagnetic field, kind of like a USB stick.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's got a good amount of space in there.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, a solid state disk drive that's
right.
3 feet across.
Right, that's a lot of space.
That's a lot of space. And sort of random thoughts don't really get held in there, but
mm-hmm.
things that strongly impact us.
Right.
As I said, thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that are strongly held and repeated over and over and over again get held in there. Now, what ends up happening is just like, a USB stick, when you stick it in the computer, you can access that storage, right? So when you come up on a situation, your system, and by that I mean your entire body goes, oh, we've seen that before. Let's pull from storage and just sort of run that program.
Uh-huh.
And we'll put that at the forefront, and then we don't have to worry about it. Uh-huh. It's already run. It's already programmed. We can just do that again. Well, the problem with that is if there are strongly held thoughts and beliefs and emotions that are held out there, that's what's going to get run.
Right.
And I liken it, one of the metaphors that I liken it to is for folks who've had cataracts.
Mm-hmm.
My father-in-law had cataracts for years, and he stopped being able to watch TV, and he stopped being able to read, and he was perfectly miserable because his vision was occluded all the time. His vision was blurry. Cataracts actually change the color spectrum that you perceive, and it was really kind of awful. And his whole world became about those cataracts. Well, when we all finally blackmailed him into going and having cataracts, it was a family effort. He was like, wow, why didn't I do this before? Because he could see.
Exactly.
And that's what happens when there's a strongly held belief. Let's say the strongly held belief, maybe because of nature, maybe because of nurture, is people aren't to be trusted.
Right.
Or certain people are not to be trusted. That program runs, and suddenly you don't really know that you have a choice in the matter. It's not that you don't have a choice, it's that you don't know you have a choice, because this thing comes in automatically and runs the people can't be trusted, therefore you're going to act accordingly.
Right. Well, you mentioned it at a perfect time, Sue. We've got to run to a break.
Cool.
We'll be right back after these messages on the New Bridge Radio Show.
Looking to launch your new masterpiece? Then try something new with Moonbow Publishing and Publications. At Moonbow, we have a strong desire to serve authors in a powerful and meaningful way. After all, you've poured your heart and soul into your writing, and we fully understand and respect that. Remember this: you will own the copyright to your work. You will have the final say on your work before published. Even after all of that, we've saved the best for last. we won't take a percentage sold. Nope, not a penny. Excited about MoonbowPublications.com yet? We thought so. Take advantage of our company's services like book editing, formatting, and covers, publishing, and photography. Moonbow Publishing and Publications has everything you're looking for in a company. Remember, we will not keep any commissions. We are a boutique publishing company focusing on spiritual, health and wellness, and personal growth genres. So come and see what we can do for you at MoonbowPublications.com. That's MoonbowPublications.com. Moonbow Publications, a new kind of publishing company.
Welcome back to the New Bridge Radio Show on WLTK-DB. Let's talk. I am your host, Kevin Mackey, and we are speaking with Sue Wilhite. She is one of the most fascinating people on the planet, and we were just talking about seeing clearly, and we were talking about biofield clearing. And I'm curious to know, Sue. I know you're certified at it. Now, did you go to classes with Eileen McCusick?
McCusick. Yes, I did. I've taken 3 levels of classes from her over the last several years, and they are very strict is not quite the right word, because that, it feels very constraining, but they're very tight on their credentialing. And they want to make sure that people are trained properly, that they know how to talk about it, that they know how to not cause harm, essentially.
Right. Oh, right.
Yeah.
So when you started to experiment with the biofield clearing, were you kind of amazed at how efficient it was?
Well, that's an understatement. The thing that I love about it is, I thought hypnotherapy was really cool. And one of the sort of, I don't know whether you call it an adjunct therapies of EFT, emotional freedom technique, and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I thought those were awesome too, because they could get to the root of the issue really, really fast, right? And that was one of the things. Remember when I was a programmer and a systems designer and an IT manager, was like, can I get people done faster?
Right.
And with biofield tuning, the cool thing is that I don't need to know, and my clients don't need to know what the underlying issue is. We just need to know that stuff may or may not be working 100% in their life. There's stuff that's going on. They seem to have cataracts. They seem to have, triggers that are going off. I don't need to know. They don't need to know. We literally stick a fork in it. and using coherent sound, we remove that strongly held, well, we don't remove it. I keep saying that and I get to correct myself. We retune the energy. We retune that strongly held thought or belief, the electrical pattern of it. We make that not a distortion. We release that energy into the system. And now they don't have that reaction anymore. It's really, it's astonishing. And there's side benefits that show up that are not immediately obvious. And then it's like, oh, wait, one of my clients tripled his income in about a year because he got out of his own way in terms of his job performance. And he was poached twice, which is how he ended up tripling his income. The 2 jumps were amazing. I've had other folks set a goal for themselves. I work a lot with folks who are in their own business. And they, this one client of mine set a goal of 100,000 for the year, and she's on track to make 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we need to know what was going on? No. It was just, oh, there's a distortion. Let's get rid of it.
That's interesting. Now, when you do sessions with people, do they, you know, I'm imagining that at times you kind of do your forks. Now, do the forks kind of tell you, okay, that's enough?
Yes. What ends up happening is, and I got up during the commercial and I grabbed a couple of the forks. So this is one of the forks
Mm-hmm.
that I use. It's 174 hertz. And what I'm doing is I'm putting it in the field and I'm moving it slowly through their field with the intention of picking up distortions. And what happens is it's just like running into, a bit of soft jelly. It just sort of goes, okay, I'm going to stop now. All right. And then I just, strike the fork and hold it again, and strike the fork and hold it again. And I'm continually kind of testing it and moving it a little bit to see if that jelly-like feeling goes away. And then when it does, it's like the fork goes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, that's the release.
So now when people have this done, do you sometimes do they sometimes come in and it's a short little session like, okay, we're done here?
It can be usually only after several sessions. The first session, I always make it 90 minutes and tell people just plan on 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first session is like, going into the dentist after you haven't been for 10 years. a lot of stuff to get through.
Right.
And after that, it can be an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes 45 minutes, but it's very seldom less than that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I also know I've also come to know that you are doing advanced training in biofield and are starting to learn how to clear spaces.
Yes.
And
Actually,
that
I've started doing that. Yes.
and this sounds fascinating. So are you going in and clearing, like, are you finding that some places have really stagnant energy?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
And so what kind of things happen after you clear this space? Like, do people are, oh, suddenly we're getting along?
Yes. And actually, what one of them that I did was really, it was really fascinating. I went from room to room in the house,
Mhm.
and there was one place. It was like it used to be a pantry, and the previous owners had changed it up and made it into just a regular storage room. And the the fork, I mean, just walking in there felt like I was walking into jelly. And they said, wow, it's always felt horrible in that part of the house, and we never wanted to do anything. And in
Mhm.
fact, one of the owners' office was directly above that space, and they hated going into their office.
Oh, wow.
And I cleared that space, and they walked in and they said, "Oh, I'm redecorating in here. This is cool." So it was interesting that the space was affecting, the energy of the space below was affecting the space above and making that person just completely reluctant to go to that corner of the house.
Mhm. That's interesting. Now, um, wh- what- when you after you've done this, do people report a change in not necessarily vibration, but a change in personalities?
Not so much personalities, but the people that I've done house clearing for have found that it's easier. Let me back up for a moment. So the people that I've done house clearing for, whether it's random or not, seem to have issues with clutter.
Oh.
It's not that there's a hoarding problem. I haven't gone into any space like that, but there's issues with clutter, things not being put away, things, piling up, and people just feeling overwhelmed with cleaning it up. And after I've cleared the space, it's like, oh, we can throw stuff away, we can put stuff away, we've got these organizing tools. It's really amazing. And they sent me, aftershocks.
That is so interesting. That means that kind of clutter mentality is really an energy.
Yes.
It's an energy that could be clear. Like,
Yes.
could the spaces include like entire city blocks?
More than likely.
Because there's a city block here in Seattle.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. The electrical signals that we put out have a frequency, right? The Earth has a frequency. It's called the Schumann resonance, right? And it's a particular frequency, and it moves up and down its own multiple scale of it. Sorry, numbers and I are not that great of friends, but I believe it's something like 6.93 hertz or 6.83 hertz, something like that. And so the Schumann resonance moves up and down in multiples of that around the planet. And it just sort of does this naturally. Our houses and our offices and our buildings and anything that runs electricity is mostly, at least in the United States, 60 hertz. Do the math. That is not a multiple of 6.83.
Right.
So we are immersing ourselves in a frequency that is not natural to our bodies and natural to our Earth. Now, I'm not saying get rid of electricity, and some people do. That's fine. Go off the grid. Go for it. Have at. And it's really good to go outside, and this is why you want to go hug a tree. Because it puts you back into your natural frequency. Now, excuse me, there are probably some city blocks where not only is there 60 hertz worth of frequency, but there's possibly some other frequencies that are going on that are clashing. When you get frequencies that are out of harmonic, they're going to clash, and you're going to feel it. You're literally going to feel the vibe. And it's not going to be comfortable. You're going to be always slightly twitchy. It's not going to feel good. It's out of rhythm. It's out of frequency with your own natural setting.
That makes perfect sense, because in this particular block that I'm talking about in Seattle, and I won't say what it is, but there's a lot of there are like skyscrapers that are catty corner to each other. And what's interesting is every morning I used to be at this particular intersection, and I'd be ready to get on a bus. And what was weird is I was standing there waiting for the bus. It's like early in the morning. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there waiting for the bus, and I somehow saw a reflection of somebody opening my backpack, of my work backpack. And I turned around and I kind of smiled at him. I kind of caught him, and they're like, "Oh, do you know when the bus is coming?" And I'm like, "Oh, you can look at it." And then, they walked away from me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. How did I see their reflection?
Oh, interesting.
There's nothing reflective here. So when you mentioned that it could be that kind of energy that is in that place that is causing all kinds of weirdness.
We feel each other's vibes. We feel each other's vibes. And so if that person was that close to you, then your 3-foot boundary was intersecting with his or her 3-foot boundary. And that vibe was literally influencing your brain.
Exactly.
So that makes total sense to me. You don't see with your eyes, you see with your brain. You don't hear with your ears, you hear with your brain. You actually hear with your skin, but that's another thing altogether. We go off on that one for a while.
You know, there is an experiment that they're doing. I can't remember what country it is, where they have these kids that are blindfolded, and they're asking them to color in coloring different coloring books, and they color it perfectly.
Yes.
Because even though they're looking, they've got this thick, heavy blindfold on, and they're able to do it just fine.
Yes, because color has a frequency. And you need to be extraordinarily sensitive and trained in how to pick that up. But absolutely, light and sound are just, I'm giving away my lapidary experience. They're just like sapphires and rubies. It's just the other end of the spectrum for the same thing. Sound, light, electricity, 5G, 4G, whatever it is you're calling it, the sunlight, everything is on that same spectrum of vibration and frequency. And you can go on the internet and you know, it used to be you could go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, but nobody does that anymore. You can find the charts that show, you know, from zero frequency to, you know, billions of hertz, what the frequencies are. Galaxies have frequencies.
Right.
You know, the sun has a frequency. The earth has a frequency. It's a Schumann resonance.
You know, so as you've been working with the biofield energy, have you had any kind of amazing healing opportunities that have come up? Like anything that you were like, wait, what was that?
Yes. And I have to do the standard disclaimer. I'm not a medical professional. I don't offer to treat medically anybody. And one of my first clients, when I was first taking biofield tuning, we have to do a certain number of biofield tunings before we can get certified. So we have to do them for free for the community. We get to go do community service and practice. It's like becoming a therapist. You got to do your hours. And so one of my clients was a woman, and she had 3 kids. And during her 3rd pregnancy, she was also running a daycare for infants and toddlers. And she was wandering around her house a lot of times with a baby or a toddler sitting on her hips. Now, for the guys in the audience who have never been around a pregnant woman, during the 3rd trimester, the ligaments and joints of a pregnant woman get very loosey. And they stretch because the pelvis needs to get into position for the baby to drop. So the ligaments all over the body become stretched. And so not only was she, you know, doing something that most chiropractors scream about, which is, you know, cocking the hip up and putting a baby on it, but that was causing pressure on the ligaments that were already stretching. And so after she had her 3rd child, the ligaments never went back in her hips. So her hip joint was constantly popping out. And so about every 2 weeks, she had to go to the chiropractor, get it put back in. And she'd been doing this for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
Her son was 16 when she came to see me. We did the biofield tuning. This was not part of the biofield. She didn't tell me this at the beginning. I had no clue that this was going on. We do the biofield tuning. We clear stuff. She sits up. She's going, wow, I'm feeling really good. I feel really light. And she gets down off the table, and she starts to walk across the room, and she stops, and she goes, I can walk. And I kind of scratched my head, and I said, you know, you came up the stairs, and you walked into my office. I did just fine. She goes, you don't understand. And she started walking back and forth across the treatment room. She's going, I can walk. I can walk. This is so cool. Her hip had spontaneously gone back into position. And
Oh, wow.
last I heard, she had needed only one more adjustment.
Oh, wow.
And that was over 3 years ago now.
And is she still walking perfectly?
She's still walking perfectly. She's doing just fine. Thank
Wow.
you. Yeah. Yeah. So it is a side effect of the whole mind-body healing process that sometimes when you remove strongly held thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, the body goes, oh, I don't need to carry that anymore. I don't need to carry the outward sign of that anymore. And it just sort of goes, okay, I'm clear. We're done. And things spontaneously heal. And yet we're not practicing medicine. This is not what we're about. We're about providing clarity, stress relief, allowing things to fall away that are getting in the way, and have people have better lives, more productive, more better.
Right. So let me ask you this. So for the certification, how long did it take you to become completely certified?
Let's see. I think it was just under a year. Because I had to take the initial class, and then there were a certain number of practice sessions that I had to do. And then I had to take the practitioner class. And then there were a certain number of practice sessions, even more practice sessions that I had to do. And that whole process was about a year.
Nice. So that brings up makes me think of another question. Now, for the tuning and the certification, do you are you able to do that? Do you have to do this in person with the person, or are you able to do it remotely?
So the training and certification is handled by Eileen's Institute. I don't do training, although that's something pre-COVID that I was asking, can I get on the teacher track? Get going on that, and that's kind of on hold right now. And yes, they are doing it remotely. They were doing the foundations class remotely starting early this year, and they just started the practitioner remotely. They just had their first two classes graduate from that. As far as sessions are concerned, it was very funny because for well over a decade, Eileen said, no, these must be done in person. You may not do remote sessions. It can't be done. Don't do it. Don't even offer it. It's not valid. Can't be done. And about a year before COVID hit, somebody challenged her. One of the students challenged her and said, well, you say this and you say this and you say this, and you say that this can't be done remotely. How do you manage to get those two things to match up? And she went, oh, okay, well, let me do some experiments. And so she got together with some of her teachers and some volunteers who had never had biofield tuning before. And they did a series of tests, and lo and behold, yes, you can do them remotely. It works just fine. I have been doing them remotely since COVID.
Nice.
Yes.
And there's and you're seeing great results, even though it's
seeing
remotely.
Great results. Absolutely. Nice. Do I prefer to do it in person? Of course. Am I thrilled to be able to work at somebody in South Africa? Yes.
Right. 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 So as a Reiki person, I always enjoy doing distance Reiki a little more.
Right.
Because for me, it always seems really powerful. And sometimes when I have people live, I'm putting my hands on them and wait, is this even working?
Right, right,
And they're feeling something amazing. And I'm like, for real? And then sometimes, there's lights twirling and the angels are in the room and it feels like the Reiki is like going a million miles an hour. And they're like,
right,
I felt nothing.
right, right, right. Exactly, exactly.
Mhm,
And I get a lot of feedback. One of the things about the practitioner training that they're very insistent upon is asking for feedback from the clients.
mhm,
This is not a technique like Reiki or even hypnosis, where the client just gets to sit back and kind of zone out. Um, it's an interactive process
mhm,
because there are things that I am, that I'm clearing, that I'm releasing stuff, and sometimes emotions come up, physical sensations come up. I want to monitor that and
mhm.
make sure that any distress is handled in the moment, taken care of. We're not going to let them go home and stew on it. It's like, let's handle this
Right.
right here and now.
Right. Right. So, have you noticed any changes in your own field, in your own person since you started doing it?
Oh yes.
Any?
So one of the things that spontaneously happened for me was uh, a series of food allergies went away
Oh.
spontaneously.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it wasn't something we were working on. It wasn't something that was going. That was the intent. But once again, it was like, oh, I literally felt it go away.
Oh, wow. What kind of food allergy?
Nightshades.
Oh, wow.
So potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, and bell peppers, among others, but those are the four biggies. Um, I used to get blisters on the inside of my mouth if
Oh.
I ate them. At, at best, I felt slightly nauseous.
Uh-huh.
And when this particular session happened, I call it the bang swoop. It was literally felt like a lightning bolt had come into my body and left with the allergy.
Mm. And
And
did
don't
you?
ask me how I knew.
Mhm.
It was just it was a priestess thing. I'm definitely not a priestess. It was like, oh, my allergies just went. Okay, that was exciting. And other people in the room noticed an energy shift in the room. They didn't know what it
Mhm.
was,
Mhm.
but they went, what was that? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've never had a biofield clearing myself, but I have had interesting sound experiments take place, and I've been like, well, like here in Bothell, there's a very, very old red Western red cedar that you can walk under,
Hmm.
and someone brought a crystal singing bowl
Hmm.
underneath it. And there was a group of us standing there. And I mean, when they did the singing bowl under this tree, something really amazing happened. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was like it's unexplainable. It was just an amazing thing. I felt like my teeth were vibrating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they probably were.
They probably
Uh,
were.
Probably were. And there was probably a spontaneous clearing that was going on.
Exactly. Exactly. Well,
Because what we're really doing in the biofield is we're putting a coherent frequency in where there was non-coherent frequency. And if you hold it long enough, the most consistent frequency wins.
mm, that makes perfect sense too.
Right? That's
Hmm.
kind of a rule in physics. The
Hmm.
most coherent and sustained frequency wins. And
Hmm.
so if there was a vibration going on and it was held and it was counter to something that was not working for you, then it would go.
Yeah. Well, boy, the hour has gone by so fast, Sue.
Right?
Tell everyone how they can find you, how they can experience a biofield clearing.
So my website is the sweetsoundofsuccess.com. I always put the in there and it's not in there. Sweetsoundofsuccess.com. And you can find out all about me. I have links to the biofield tuning website. And I really recommend a set of 3 because it's a logarithmic experience. The first one, like I said, it's like going to the dentist. The first one, we clear off some stuff. People find some amazing things that happen with just one. Don't get me wrong. But the second one and the third one are just gangbusters. They're amazing.
I believe it. I believe it. So I can't. Well, we didn't even get a chance to talk about business stuff.
If you get cleared with stuff that is getting in your way, if you clear that out, your life, your business, all of it works better.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Well, Sue, I can't tell you how fun this show has been, and it's been great meeting you. I hope we can have you back again.
I hope so. This has been great. We've got so much more to talk about.
Right, I know. It felt like we just scratched the surface. Well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of the New Bridge Radio Show. I can't thank you enough for coming along on this journey and for being with us. I hope you'll join us next week. And remember, if you want to get in touch with us, just email us at thenewbridgeradioshow@gmail.com. Thanks and have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Kevin.